Hey there, friends, fiends. Thanks for checking out the stream. We're doing another stream today. Today we're kind of talking about like a little bit of a trap that comes with making dungeons, or a lot of, it's hard to say mistakes, but challenges or simplicities that I often see, especially with newer people making dungeons. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. It's been on my mind recently for a couple of reasons. One, I've got a friend who's about to take their initial run behind the screen. Very exciting. They're working on their own little one-shot. And so very excited, helping them with them here and there, helping them feel things out and, getting them confident, getting them to the place where they'll feel prepared to run, ready to run. They're feeling pretty good right now, so that's all looking good. Which, if that is the case, then that'll be nice to have. It'll be, at that point, 3 different dungeon masters or game masters in the group, which is really nice. Lots of opportunities to kind of trade off and make sure nobody gets particularly burned out or anything like that, which is always nice. The second reason it's been on my mind is because I just finished reading Perilous Wilds. It's been on my list forever. I've had it forever, but I finally got around to reading it. And there is a dungeon creation section, and I jumped through and was doing a bunch of that and seeing how that worked. If you're not familiar with the Perilous Wilds, it's a supplement for Dungeon World. And so it's got a lot of improvisational dungeon building and running kind of interesting ideas. It was very interesting to see how closely it aligned with some of the ways that I build dungeons, and then took a hard left turn and went in a very different direction than the way that I build dungeons. So that was very interesting. It's always interesting to get more data like that, see how different people work and accomplish the same thing that you do, so that way you can be like, oh, I can maybe pick some of the things that I like out of that and add it to my own treasure trove of tools that I use. But when it comes to specifically what is kind of like a trap that I see, specifically in dungeon building, is this idea that every room has something in it, and that thing is usually a combat. And this is I feel, a very, very new dungeon master or game master thing that happens. Especially, like I said, I talked with my one friend who's getting ready to run this one shot. And they were talking about, oh, well, I have these nodes while you guys are doing the travel that, there are going to be encounters that happen along the way. And that's one of the things that made me think, it was like, oh, right. But encounters, I use encounters as a very broad term, whereas I think a lot of people kind of focus and be like, encounters mean combat, especially for newer dungeon masters. Generally, we think about an encounter being a combat encounter, but it can be a lot of different things. And then it made me think, well, why is that the case? Well, I think one of it is because D&D doesn't do a very good job about giving you a lot of rules about how to build things other than combat encounters, or how to run things other than combat encounters. This goes back to D&D. When you look at it, is about 2/3 of the book is combat rules, and then the other third of it is everything else, including like spells and tables and everything else. So it's understandable that it kind of is just like, Dungeon Master, go do your thing and figure it out. So I was like, all right, well, that's very interesting. And then the dungeon building advice and how to build dungeons and how to use them. And then you start to understand why people don't like them as much. Really? You start to see that a lot, and you go, oh, okay, now I'm starting to understand why people are struggling with this. Because I think that is the trap, that it's kind of, you walk into some sort of dungeon chamber and you're like, there's either going to be a trap in here or some sort of hazard, obstacle. There's going to be some sort of monster, or there's probably not going to be anything in here. And that made me think, oh, well, this is a problem that I have kind of already solved, at least for myself. And this is another thing where we kind of step back in time and we grab some things that are from old D&D and we kind of pull them back up into the future. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. It's about, how do you go about stalking a dungeon? Specifically, how do you deal with the issues that come up, especially for a new dungeon master? Things like that blank page paralysis, where you're like, I don't know what to put in the dungeon. Where do I start? Or this feeling to have an even mix of encounter types. Sometimes you're like, if you're past the point, sometimes people are at the point where it's all combat all the time. But if you get past that point where it's like, oh, well, it needs to be 1/3 combat and 1/3 something to talk to, social encounters, and then 1/3 some sort of exploration encounter, like puzzles or traps or anything. And then where do I set the difficulty for these things, which is kind of difficult. Where do I put treasure? How much treasure do I put in? Again, they're not super great at doing that. 2024 is a little bit better because basically every monster now has a treasure table tied to it. So even if you were doing a trap, you could take a trap and figure out its relative CR, kind of, and from that way use one of those monster tables to kind of give you an idea of what might be there. But then you still have to come up with a reason why it's there. But the system will help with that maybe a little bit, but not probably fully solve that. That is where you're going to have to cook a little bit with your DM brain to make that happen. So, I'm going to talk about it. It's a very simplistic system. I've used it for a very long time, refined it. It's based off of BX. And we'll get into it. Let's get into it. So, where did it kind of come from, like this system that I have for stocking dungeons? Well, it came from old school D&D, not OSR stuff, but like true like BX old school. It's a fork of what I think is Holmes Basic. I don't think it's Mold Bay, Minster. I think it's Holmes. That's not that important. They're all very similar, and essentially that comes with you roll a 1d6. And at this point, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pull us over. I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about a little bit. I think that might be helpful. And this is going to be real low tech today. We're just going to, I'm going to throw you guys over to workspace. And we're going to get the window capture up. That is not the thing that we're trying to look at. There. Do this. So this is the notepad. Let me see. Let's see if you can see what I'm writing. Okay, whoa, that's way down. All right. Can I do this way? That is still not much better. Okay, that's all right. Now that I know where we're starting. Right there. That's fine. So, the Holmes Basic, like BX, is 1d6 table. BX is basic expert. It's old D&D. You don't need to know that if you're not familiar with it. You know, this is really small. Maybe I should use a Google Doc. I wasn't really planning to use a Google Doc, but what happens? All right, let me put you back. Let me just pull up a document. No, I don't need to save this. Let's go into my Google Docs and let's make a new document. Go. All right, let's try this guy instead. And this will be a little bit easier because I can go in here and fit this in. Let me move some of this stuff around. One moment, please. All right, we're gonna move that there. We're gonna move this over here. No, not you fool. I'm trying to move tabs around. And you know what? You guys probably don't need to see the audio tab. We'll get that out of the way. All right, this should be good. This should be good. Now we're cooking with something, not gas. Here we go. All right, so 26 BX dungeon stocking, and it depends on when you use this as to your style of making dungeons. I do it both ways. Sometimes I start with the map. Sometimes I start with what's in it. I kind of go with whatever the kernel is that I have. That's always useful for me when I'm making an adventure from scratch. Is to be like, what is the thing that's exciting me? What is the thing that I want to be in this adventure? And how do I get to that point? So if it's like, well, I want to have a battle with a big frog monster. Okay, big frog monster. That sounds like a cool fight. And maybe it's a custom monster. Maybe I'll make the custom monster first. Be like, okay, is that the climax? Maybe or maybe not. If it makes sense for a climax, okay, what do I build an adventure to get to that, to where this fight with this big frog creature, froghemoth or whatever it is the most important thing that's happening in here. And then build out from there. Sometimes it's like, I have an idea for a cool thing that's going to happen in a dungeon, so I'll make the dungeon map first. Sometimes I have the encounter. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I have a cool piece of treasure, or a very specific piece of treasure that I want to give the players. Where do I think that would be found? And so now then I kind of build out the dungeon backwards from there. So depending on where it is, you might do all your encounters first, might do all your chambers first. You might do all your treasure first. Or you might do the map first. There's no right or wrong way to build dungeons. It's whatever way is useful for you. As a general system, I usually make a node map first. That's usually one of the first things I do. Just because I find it easier for me to, once I have some spatial relation to things, to start filling in blanks. But that's just a me thing. And I don't always do it that way, for sure. Alright, 26 dungeon sucking. It's super, super simple. Alright, so, 1 to 2. 1 to 2 is empty. There's nothing in there. So you just roll a d6. 3 to 4. There's a monster in there. And 5 to 6. Oh, sorry, there's 5. 5's a trap. And 6 is a special. Special is a weird thing. You need to look at the tables. It's a special encounter. Usually it's a higher level monster or a specific style of trap or hazard. Or a trick or something like that. It has like its own little roll table that you use on it. But this is the basic BX dungeon stalking, like I said, from Holmes. Which is what I base mine off of. It's super simple, it's very easy, it's very straightforward. There's really not a lot going on with it. As the name would imply, basic D&D is pretty basic. There's not a lot going on with it. Now, I can't remember... Like I said, I think this is from Holmes, so across BX, the different versions of BX, there are slight different interpretations of the table, but the table is relatively consistent across all of them, or very similar across all of them. But it also leaves a lot of room for interpretation. You know, what is the special? The special is just something else, so the type of monster in this case, but if you didn't know that on face value, you'd be like, what the heck does special mean? And you also need to roll for treasure on a separate thing anytime that you were doing a chamber or anything of that nature. Which I thought was very interesting. It feels like for me, that could be part of the same roll. And so this was one of the things, like when I was pulling that, when I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do my own dungeon stalking, because I was in that spot that I think a lot of new dungeon masters are, and even I wasn't particularly new. It's just I was always doing bespoke dungeons, and I was always like, oh, I'm always like making sure that these encounters are here and these encounters are here. Like I said, I was trying to make sure there were mixes of things, not necessarily equilateral, like not full equal mixes. It'll be like, oh, I want to make sure there's exploration stuff, and that there's somebody to talk to, and that there is some things to fight, etc. But as I got more and more experienced, I was like, well, really kind of comes down to really only kind of two things: whether there's a creature there or not, whether there's treasure there or not, or if there's some sort of hazard there or not. And it's like, oh, okay, so we really actually only have like 3 things that we need to worry about. And I was like, all right, well, I can make a table for that. 3 things is pretty easy to make a table for. And so that's where we ended up with my D6 dungeon stalking table. And move this out of here. And so this is mine. This is the one that I use. I think it's super useful. I've been using it for a lot of years at this point. And so this is, we'll say this is the Red Ragged Fiend. Well, yeah, 1d6 Red Ragged Fiend. Dungeon stalking table. Which actually, I lied already. It's actually 2d6. And by 2d6, you're going to be... Maybe it'd be better to call it... I always go back and forth on the name. 26 times 2. Because you're actually going to roll 2d6, but you're not going to collate them. Not going to sum them and use that. Because it's only a d6 table. So, you get a 1. What's in 1? We walk into this room. It's empty. There's nothing in here. Super easy. Number 2. It's empty. But, we'll do it this way. There's a treasure. There's some sort of treasure in here. Now, one of the things that you will find is that you have to be a little broad in what you consider treasure. Doesn't mean that there are empty rooms with just a treasure chest in there. Can you do that? Yes. Should you do that every once in a while? Yes. But here's the problem. If you put a treasure chest in the middle of an empty room, your players are going to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out why why this thing isn't trapped or if it's a mimic. They're gonna do everything except walk up there and, you know, try to get the treasure. And then they will eventually do that. They'll spend 10 to 20 minutes hemming and hawing about it, and then eventually they're gonna try to go get the treasure. And you probably don't want to waste that time. So don't do that often. But you can also expand what you mean by treasure. Treasure isn't always just filthy lucre. It could be a clue or information or a very specific item, or it doesn't always have to be tangible is really the kind of thing I'm getting at. It's like one of the things you can do for treasure is that you can just use this as like diegetic in-world world building stuff. So if you're like, oh, the treasure in here is that there is a fresco on the wall that allows them to interpret something about or learn something new about the world. That is their treasure. That's their little treat for going down here and taking a look in this room. Doesn't always have to be gold coins. So then what's 3? 3 is a HOTT. Now, those of you who have watched the channel before know what HOTT is. If you have not, we'll just go ahead and put it in here. That is a hazard, obstacle, trick, or trap. That's what HOTT stands for. So this is some sort of exploration challenge for the most part. This means that, and it depends on the dungeon that you're making, like if you are in a natural cave system, maybe it's a big chasm that they have to cross, or a cliff face that they need to scale. It can be a classic spear trap or poison dart trap. It can be some sort of trick. Old school D&D's got a ton of tricks in it, like fountains all over the place that have weird magical effects that may or may not do good or bad things for you, or relatively neutral things. Like there's ones that like change your gender and stuff, and you're like, okay. I mean, it's weird, I guess, but it doesn't really impact me, my character, in a super meaningful way. And you have players that might be upset by that, depending on what you do, if you do stuff like that. But tricks like that, and obstacles is just, you know, anything that's in your way, anything that makes getting through this area difficult, a challenge that can provide some sort of setback for you. When that might be hit point damage, that might be time, it might be gear, it could be anything that causes you, there's a chance that you will lose something. Just like any challenge in D&D, you want there to be stakes, which means if you fail at something, this is going to be a dice roll thing, something bad should happen. Maybe you lose a spell slot or whatever it is, or sometimes you just use the spell slot to get past it. Like doing things like maybe there's an eye trap that fires magic missiles at people. It's an ocular thing. It's a very sort of like Legend of Zelda eye above the door kind of thing that shoots a laser, you know, these magic missile lasers at you. Well, if you use a spell like Fog Cloud and now you're able to move around in there and it's not able to see you, cool. You used a resource, you got through here. Perfect. It did its job. So 4. You'll start to see a pattern develop. HOTT with treasure. Alright, well, you can probably guess what the next 2 are going to be. So we've got empty rooms. We've got rooms that have some sort of exploration challenge in it. And the only thing we're missing are rooms that have some sort of creatures in them. Usually I just call it monster, but it would be more appropriate to say creature. So why don't we go ahead and do that? For this instance, I usually put monster because that's generally, most of the time they're going to be combats. They don't have to be combats though. And depending on the context of which the dungeon and the creatures and the party, you run across somebody and they may or may not be hostile. This could be a trader that trades with the goblins down in the caves, or anybody. Could be a prisoner, could be anything. And then of course 6 is creature with treasure. And that's stable. It is super easy. The table itself is very simplistic. It's really not that different from our BX table. It's very, very similar. Now, where things start to get really fun, the things that I really like about this table, which I think is probably one of the better things I've ever put together, is rolling twice on the table and then combining those results. Because if you do that, that means that it goes from being a 1 in 6 chance that there's an empty room to a essentially 1 in, what is that, 36 chance? Because you have to roll 2 ones. So 6 times 6, yeah, 36. So a 1 in 36 chance that there's going to be an actual empty room. So empty rooms don't show up that often, which is good. But they still do show up sometimes. But you'll often come up with rooms that might seem like they're empty. And things that are going to change. Because once you do that, once you start rolling 2 dice, you're going to end up with some very interesting things. Like you're going to end up with some situations that you couldn't otherwise get. So you can get things like, we'll do it this way. So you can get some special situations for chambers. We'll do this. You can get, hot with monster, or this type creature. So immediately that could be a combat encounter that's on like a scree or a grade, and like every time somebody gets hit, there's a chance that they're going to slide further down. There's maybe a chasm down at the bottom, just to add a little bit of extra texture to it. Now that's already a much more interesting fight than bad guys and good guys start at opposite sides of chambers and whack each other till one of them dies. Now you've got this interesting interplay in it. Or it could be, let's say if we were still using that scree grade that goes down to a chasm where there's all this loose stone where it's really easy to lose your footing, there could be a neutral NPC who's hanging on for dear life, maybe crying out for people, and that's why they entered this room. Why they ran down this dungeon chamber. This person's about to lose their grip and fall into the chasm. And if they make it there in time and are able to figure out how to get down there and save them, maybe they get some information about what's going on in this room, or going on in the dungeon, who they are, why they're here, etc. Maybe they get a reward for saving this person. 2 already way more interesting rooms in a dungeon that flat might be with like that BX stalking. Where it's like, oh, it's just empty, or oh, there's just a monster in here. So that's hot with creature. You can have hot times 2. I'm gonna do it this way. We can have basically everything times 2. We have treasure. Now, obviously, treasure will show up with monsters, and treasures will show up with hot encounters. That's all pretty straightforward. We don't really need to. We don't really need to spend a lot of time talking about that. You understand, monsters sometimes have treasure on them. I think that's a pretty common thing that we understand. So, what I really want to focus in are these doubles. So anytime that you get a double like this, what it's saying is essentially something special is happening here. Not quite the same special as this special up here, but there's something interesting about that. So, a duplicate means either more or greater. This kind of informs us as we're kind of building dungeons. So what that means is like, hey, if we have that hot times 2, let's say that this is a trapped hallway. This now can be multiple traps in it. There's more traps in it. Now it's an Indiana Jones style gauntlet hallway that has a whole bunch of traps in it that you have to get through. There's not just one trap. It's not just like a singular pit trap. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in this room. That's a very easy way to do that. Hey, how you doing? Or it could be one much more deadly trap if you want to. Sometimes one of the problems with D&D is that the traps usually are pretty toothless. Usually they don't really kill anybody. You're like, oh, you're a 5th level party and this poison trap, dart trap hits you for 5d4 damage. Ooh, boy. Nobody's, unless you were already way down in health, like there's no threat there. Like that's not cool. I took some damage. That was a fun encounter. But you could also make it like a super greater trap and be like, oh, well, there's This one's really deadly. Like, this one is, let's say if you were a 5th level party, that's when we start talking about, well, I do limited damage ratio. So if we were a 5th level party and it was going to hit one person, that would be doing 5d10 plus 5 damage. So the likelihood, I mean, we can just do it right here. So that would be doing 36 points of damage. Is that probably going to kill a 5th level character? No, I mean, maybe the wizard. Maybe the wizard. Because the wizard doesn't have... Anybody who's got a d6 hit points needs to watch out. Or if you have somebody who is not at full health because they're, you know, halfway through the dungeon. Yeah, this is probably going to knock them on their butt. And now they're going to have to use healing resources, spells, something to get them back up. Or that's if it targeted one creature. If it targeted... I would do 5d6 plus 5 if it was targeting multiple people or was some sort of area effect. Which in this case, wow, terrible roll. We'll re-roll that just for fun. Okay, that's much better. 21 points of damage. So 21 points of damage, again, not going to kill anybody. But half the party taking 21 damage is not great. In fact, that's a bigger burden than having the one person take much more damage. Because now you have to waste spells on different people. Or healing potions, or second winds, or however they're using to recoup those hit points. If you keep that pressure on them, dungeons flow very, very well. You want to keep the pressure where they're like, we need to keep moving forward. Be like, they can't, don't let them take like long rests in the dungeons, for the most part. They can always try to take a long rest in the dungeon, but usually that doesn't happen. It doesn't go very well because there are active monsters in the dungeon. They are going to run across you. So that would be, you know, what a HOTT times 2 would look like. A monster times 2, again, we go either more or we go greater. So if we do more, there are multiple groups of monsters in here. Or this would be an area where I would break my encounter building rules. So my general rule of thumb, and I think it's most people's rule of thumb now for 5e 2024, is that you don't really want to have more monsters than twice the number of PCs that are in the potential encounter. So if we have 4 PCs, we don't really want to throw more than 8 monsters on there because action economy is such an important part as to how combat's going to go. More creatures, more attacks. More opportunities to deal damage, and less opportunity to get that damage dealers off the board. But this is an opportunity to be like, oh, well, we're going to break that. So we're going to have maybe a bunch of swarms that are going to flow out, and maybe we'll do... This would be a thing where I would be like, you know, we could just bring it up, I guess. We've been using level 4 party, so let's do that. So let's say we're level 4. What would be a good... I always want to do high because that's just how I build them. Like this would be a little bit much. Why are you only throwing that at me? Okay. So this might be a normal, this would be a super weird encounter, to talk about random encounters. An elephant, a trapper, and an air djinn-born pirate. I mean, I could come up with a reason why those would all be together, fighting on one side, but it would be really weird for a combat encounter. But the idea is, like, that would be what that would normally look like. But what if we were like, oh, well, we want to do a whole bunch of these guys. So that would push us barely into that, and we're at 16. That's a 4-to-1 ratio. That's way too much. But if we want to stick around going a little bit like that, then we could add like our trapper in. Actually, we could add our elephant in. Yeah. So this would be a much more palatable encounter where you actually have 9. That'll work out much better. Or we could drop it down and we could do the trapper. And we could... That's probably a bit much. I probably wouldn't go more than 12, because then it's going to be real bad. But we could throw a whole bunch of these pirates in there, and this one trapper who's in front of them. or being tamed by them or whatever. But anytime that we do that where there's a lot of them, they don't necessarily have to be all on the same side. They can be on opposing sides. The player characters might break into an encounter that is already happening and can hear about it and come see it. And that's one of the things that I really like about this, is that it gives me it tells me, my mind, it gives me a lot of options to start thinking about, okay, what could be happening here? These could be a bunch of people all on the same time, on the same side. This could be two separate groups who are in the same area that are maybe in negotiations. They might be actively fighting. They might have made some sort of, let's say, paper-thin agreement of basically non-aggression to not kill each other while they're going through the dungeon, because they might be rival adventuring parties that are going through the dungeon, maybe. Anything like that. But we can also do greater. And if we do a greater monster, this is when we start pulling out the big, nasty monsters. So if we're looking at this, you know, usually we would, this would be where I'd start to press things up into, let's do this by CR. Oh gosh. This is weird character builder. I'm still not used to this character builder yet. I just fully gave up on Global Fight Club, unfortunately, just because there's no way to use the 2014 rules, which is generally what I want to use for the encounter building, because the 2024 ones do not work very well. Let's do our CR range. Let's do 1/8. Let's say like 6. Now, in general, yeah, let's do like a oh, this Mist Hulk, that seems cool. So this would be a fully deadly encounter. Okay, so that's too much. We might drop that down to 5. Okay. Oh my gosh, so many CR6s. Come on. Alright, this might be easier if I just go down to 5. There we go. We'll do it for Rhyme Hulk. Specifically, we're adding it because of this exact warning that it's telling us. Hey, the bigger they are, be careful including enemies with CR that's higher than the party's level. Depending on the monster, you might be risking taking out one or more members of the party in a single attack. Consider swapping out the Rhyme Hulk for something a little less deadly. No, we're looking for something specifically great. And I picked party level 4 for a very specific reason in this adventure, in this example, because 4 is at the top of that band. So bands 1 through 4, adventure tier, and then 5 through 10 is the next adventure tier. So if we take a monster that's in the next one, which generally we don't do, generally we're like, that's a bad idea. We're taking it specifically because it is super deadly. It is a super bad idea. Be able to throw something in here. Now we can throw monsters in our dungeon that is like, hey, and you need to telegraph this widely and early and be like, there are things in this dungeon you probably shouldn't fight because it will probably kill you. And this might be that creature. And this would be, as they come across it, and be able to give it one of those things that we could do as our treasures. Talked about treasures aren't always filthy lucre, aren't always material goods. It could be clues like, hey, there is this big nasty monster in here, and we can show evidence of how it's ripped up other creatures that are in here, how it's ripped up the walls or whatever, because I don't know what a Rhyme Hulk is off the top of my head. It's a monstrosity, I think. So, probably nasty. Oh no, it's an elemental. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so you can have ice all over the place, people who've gotten frosted and like broken apart and all sorts of cool stuff. And be like, hey, if you guys come across this, you know that this is bad news. This is potentially an enemy that's not worth fighting. The big thing made of ice and snow and water. There's probably not a huge need to fight it. It's probably just better to go around it if you can. Unless it is actively guarding something. And then it becomes a very interesting encounter, because you now turns from maybe combat is actually the failure state of whatever we're trying to do in this chamber. But let's say that it's in the chamber and we're trying to get whatever our MacGuffin is in this dungeon. Let's say the the Rod of the Ice Queen. It's a magic elemental rod that we need for the adventure, etc., back in town. That's why we're in the dungeon. This big Rhyme Hulk is in this chamber lumbering around. It's clearly protecting this thing. You know, it's classic cinematography. It's like on a little plush pillow out in the middle of the room on a little dais raised up on a little plinth. And you're like, that's the thing we need. There's that giant monster over there. Don't really want to fight that thing. Can we come up with some shenanigans to get around fighting that thing? Can our rogue do a little sneaky sneak? Can we use some spells to do something? Do we have anything that allows us to do elemental control? Can we throw up like a wall of fire or something to, like, while it's patrolling, maybe like lock it into a corner or something like that? Like, these are all really good ways to be like, anything we can do to not have to fight that thing, because that thing's going to kick our butt. That's what we're looking at when we're talking about big, nasty, greater monsters that we're trying to add in. Now, this has come up before, and people who are new to the channel probably don't know this, but those of you who have been longtime watchers do know. I have a cold, black, dead heart when it comes to puzzles. I don't really like puzzles in D&D. I think they're kind of silly. I have the same issue with it that people do with using riddles for the password for the Ravenclaw common room in Harry Potter. That's a very specific reference. Being that, hey, the problem with riddles is that it's just objectively less safe than just having a password that changes every day. Because anybody can solve riddles. Like, it's a weird... Like, you understand what they're trying to do with the world building there, being like, but nobody's smart enough to get it. Because everybody else who goes to school here are dum-dums. But the idea being like, it's just objectively less safe, and that's sort of how puzzles work. It's like, it's just less safe than having a locked door, or a hidden door, or a secret, or something like that. It's being like, no. You have to show up and do, our puzzle for kids, and if you solve the puzzle for kids, then of course you can have access to our Mage's Sanctum or whatever it is. It's like, that shit. I have trouble with that in my brain, and in my experience, puzzles really only ever go one of two ways. One is that somebody knows what the answer to the puzzle is already, just because they know it outside of the game. They're like, oh, okay, this is the one where you have the three different columns with the different size things, and you have to move them across. Yeah, I know how to do that. And so they solve it very quickly, and then it's not really a challenge. Or it's the other, or it goes the full opposite other way, where it's like, we don't know what to do. And then you as a dungeon master watch them kind of scratch their heads for a little while, and then you're like, okay, here's a hint. Here's a second hint. Here's a third. Oh, here's the answer. And that in general, that is my experience with puzzles on both sides of the screen. Be like, so I just don't think that they're as fun as people. I think that the idea of puzzles is really fun. Like, having the idea of like, oh, we need to figure the pieces out to, step by step. You have a good idea. I have a good idea. We're coming together. We have some scratch paper out. We're making things. We're making notes. We're trying to figure this out. And then, in 15 minutes, we're like, yeah, we got it. Yay. High fives all around. But in actuality, that is very rarely the case. That is very rarely what happens, unfortunately. So I just don't put puzzles in there. But you could throw a puzzle in for these HOTS. Those hazards, obstacles, tricks, traps, because it is absolutely an obstacle. A puzzle is certainly that. So you could definitely throw it in there. There's no reason you can't. Let me see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to say specifically about these. What we should do is we should talk about, or fully move it on. We should talk about the empty rooms. Empty rooms are pretty important to have in dungeons. It's weird if every room has something in it, but empty rooms don't really serve much of a purpose, except for sometimes giving the party just like an opportunity to be like, here's a place where maybe you can take a short rest. Maybe you can hunker down for like an hour, hope nobody walks by, and you guys can take a rest. But they're useful in that kind. What I like with this is having the empty result. So, you know what, let's just roll it. So we're going to assume, let's roll until we get a 1 or a 2. Which might take me a second. Might take me a lot of seconds. Hot rolls. There we go, there's 1. Alright, so 1's empty. And 5. 5 is monster. So how do we interpret that result? So we got 1, which is empty, and we got 5, which is creature. Sorry, I used the term monster. So this could be an NPC that's in here, sure. But let's say that we do want something to be, we want this to be a more active thing. We're like, oh, I do think this is going to be a combat encounter. We can infer this is that the room might seem empty. Doesn't have to be, but might seem empty when they reach it. Which means that whoever this creature or creatures, there could be multiple, they could be hiding in ambush. It's likely, to be real honest, over the many, many, many years that I've run D&D, very rarely is the party actually very stealthy when they're going through dungeons. So it's likely that the monsters heard them coming. Somebody's clanking around in heavy armor. They're having a full conversation as they're walking down the halls. Nobody's, except the rogues, rolling any stealth checks, and the rogues far ahead. So the rogue's gonna be the first one who enters there, but you know, it's stone hallways and stuff, like voices travel. Sound travels very well in them. So it's likely that the creatures are already laying in sort of like an ambush for them. It could also mean that sometimes they're just not in that room. That makes me think of a very specific dungeon I ran where there was like a ritual room. It was sort of like a mummification room, I think is what it was. And there was another group that had broken into this area and were trying to take it over. Like they were trying to, like a cult was trying to take it over. But it wasn't theirs originally. And so the cults, they're doing stuff like you do when you buy things. So they walk into this room, this mummification room, there's nobody in there. So they start poking around. The thing is, there is somebody in there, but they're in the closet there's actually 2 guys in the closet taking an inventory of stuff that's on the shelves. And so they're like, oh, what's this door? And they open the door, and then there's like 2 guys that turn around and look at them. One of them with like parchment and quill in his hand, the other guy with like stuff in his hand pulling it off a shelf, and they're like, who are you? So you can always do that. So there's an opportunity to be like, it's not always these monsters just stand in the middle of the room waiting for the PCs to show up and they don't do anything else until that happens. You can give them some activity, something that they do. I use a D10 table in my dungeon master binder in my folder that's just preoccupations. Like if you come across people, or I need to come up with random people they run into, be like, what is this person doing? And it has things like, things like hygienes, like maybe you're traveling in the wilderness, you come across somebody who's taking a bath in a pond, or taking a swim in a pond, or something like that. They're doing this hygiene thing, and so they're just soaping up and jumping in and out of the water and cleaning themselves. And maybe you come across monsters in there who are, playing a game of dice. They could be doing all sorts of stuff. Maybe they're having an argument or talking about stuff. Maybe they're looking at a book. They could be doing all sorts of weird stuff in there. They're not just sitting around idly waiting for somebody to show up and kill them. They're going to be busy doing something. So to keep that in mind. So I find that aspect helpful. So empty kind of gives me this idea. Especially when I look at things like, if I roll a 1 and a 2, be like, oh, there's empty, and then there's empty with treasure. So the room feels very much empty. So what does that mean for the treasure? To me, I start to interpret that being like, oh, the treasure must be hidden somewhere. Like it's, somebody's stuffed something like in a little cubby hole, or, there's a false bottom in a desk, that sort of thing. Like, oh, there's places where things are hidden. And it's like, if they take the time to really turn over the room, yes, you're going to find those things. If they decide not to do that, then it's okay for them to just miss treasure. That's all right. They don't have to get everything that's in the dungeon, especially treasure. This is one of the things that I find it's sometimes hard to kind of get players to reorient themselves to that style of play sometimes. Because I think we all do that, and I don't know if that's from video games or what it is, where we're like, oh, well, we go in the dungeon and we clear every single room and make sure that every single room, all the monsters are dead, and there's nobody left in here, and we've searched every corner, and we've gotten every piece of treasure, and we know for sure that there's nothing left in here. Instead of being like, you're here usually to accomplish a very specific thing, being in the dungeon is incredibly dangerous because there's monsters all over the place. And so that's why I started to do more time-based things. It's just a little difficult, I feel like, to get, especially newer players, into that mindset. People who are coming, I think, specifically from video games, being like, oh, well, it's okay. You're usually left in an area to do whatever you want once the monsters are dead. Once whoever you're fighting in a video game is dead. And then you go collect all the loot that's in the room. Right, Baldur's Gate works very much like that. Instead being like, you guys are here to do a thing, the more you fritter around, the more likely it is a wandering monster is going to show up. And this is a thing that I've started with my DM style. I think for a long time I wasn't into random encounters, and now I'm much more into random encounters. Is that they're an active timing thing. It's like you either need to get something because you're on a time schedule. If we don't have a specific time schedule because you're just stumbled across this dungeon or whatever it is, in that case, then there's an active time pressure, and that active time pressure is, hey, you guys are aware that if you guys fritter around in rooms, if you guys aren't making forward progress, is like above table, just telling players, this is the style of game that I run. If you guys are not making forward progress, which means that you are spending extra time to really search rooms, things like that, all that takes time, or you're deciding to backtrack, not explore deeper, or look for something like that. Every time that you guys fritter around or move back through an area that you've already been through, I roll for wandering monsters. There's always a chance that somebody's going to show up. And I have infinite wandering monsters at my control. So to really reinforce that the longer the dungeon is a dangerous place, the longer you stay in the dungeon, the more fights you will get, and those fights will not be particularly lucrative for you. They're not going to have great treasure on them. They're not going to give you a lot of XP. What they're going to do is whittle away at your resources as you fritter. So don't do that. Stay on mission. Move quickly. Figure out where you need to go. And I think the last part that I want to talk about is this treasure times 2. So treasure times 2, like we said, it's either more or greater. Most of the time now, I interpret treasure times 2 of being like, there is for sure a magic item here. That treasure for sure includes a magic item. Because otherwise, the chances that I give out magic items are very low, because there's only a 10% chance in like a random treasure roll that they're going to get a magic item. And most of those are going to be healing potions and spell scrolls and stuff like that. But this gives them an opportunity to be like, now there's actually, because of how this table's set up, there's a 3 in 6 chance that there's going to be a treasure, and then another 3 in 6 chance that there's going to be a magic item. So magic items are pretty plentiful in dungeons, the way that I run them. In fact, if you want to get magic items in my game, and that's the thing that you're looking for, the easiest way to do that is to go delve dungeons, and that is a motivating factor for them. For players, be like, hey, if you guys are looking for magic items, you know for certain that most magic items are found in dungeons. That's where they end up being dropped by previous adventurers or whoever made the dungeon. All those sorts of things, all that magic coalesces down there. It's unlikely that you just find them at the market or something like that, except for like healing potions, except for the common stuff, because you can just buy those. I think that's just about everything that I wanted to talk about with this. That's about it. Like the thing's so simple. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much, is that it's elegant in its simplicity. Is that super simple, not a lot to it. You roll 2d6, you throw it in. I think, how about we do an example? We have a little bit of time. Then after this, we'll probably do some mapping, I think. Or maybe we'll look at Perilous Wilds. I'll have a think. Or if you guys have a preference, let me know. If you, in the chat, if you guys want me to focus more on, see me do some hex mapping stuff and build out those points of interest and stuff on the Caliphate. Or if you'd rather see me talk about Perilous Wilds, which I just finished reading. We can do either one. But let's do like a quick build to just kind of show how it works. Let's get like I think I got one up here, right? Why don't you just get like a small dungeon map? Just show how that stocking would work. Here's a good one. What size is this? Yeah, let's open this. Let's oh, this is in a new tab, please. All right, cool. So, ooh. What? No. Oh goodness. I'll never use this thing. Yeah, exit split screen. I don't want that. What I want to do is pull you out. Stop. There we go. Sometimes the tools aren't as helpful as they believe that they are. Browsers. Alright, because I think it'll be easier if I just do it this way. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, let's do that. So we'll go full screen. Alright. Let's, man, where am I? Play. Alright, here we go. Alright, so this is a little dungeon, just image I just pulled off Google real quick. So let's say, it looks like our start's down here in the bottom. So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 chambers. We've got 7 chambers. This is the Dungeon of Belier. We don't really know what's going on here. This first one seems to be like a common room. I'm just gonna name the rooms real quick. Yeah, so I think we'll call this the common room. We're going to this room number 2 down here. Obviously, already has a trap in here. We're going to ignore that trap because we're going to put stuff in here instead. What is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be like an altar? Can't remember. I think that's an altar. So I'm going to say shrine. 3 is just, that looks like bar, so I'm going to guess this is a, we'll say jail cell. It's probably for, I don't know. We assume anytime that religion stuff comes up like this that there's probably, I don't know, this is probably a cult, so that's probably like human sacrifice stuff that's going on. Doesn't have to be. We can always make it something else. That's not really the important thing here. There's a big statue here. That's going to be the statue of, I'm guessing, Belier. Room 5 appears to be like a private room. I think C is for curtain? C for curtain? Maybe. Not sure. Number 6. What is that thing? What is this thing? I don't know what this is. So we're just gonna say we're gonna call that antechamber before the next one because I haven't got a clue what that is. And this looks like another weird jail cell. We'll call this like a warden. The warden's office. Sure. Alright, we'll call it jailkeeper. How about that? Jailkeeper's room. Again, the dungeon's a little weird. So, that's okay though. Alright, so we know what's in here. We know what these rooms are, so what I would do is then I'd start rolling. Alright, let's roll. Alright, I got a 6, that means creature. 5, which also means creature, so double creature, 1 treasure. So we could do this. And we just kind of go down. It depends. When I build dungeons, sometimes I do all the stocking separately and then decide where I want to put it on the map. For the ease of example, this, and sometimes when I just make it, I'm just like, wherever it falls is wherever it falls. Sometimes it's more fun if it doesn't play to expectations where it's like, oh, the big fight's at the end and the little fights are in the front, so things scale appropriately. Sometimes it's fun to be like, no, the big fight's right in the front. And if you make it through that, the rest of it's mop-up duty. Which actually works out really well because that works into what I call sledgehammers encounters, where the toughest encounter in an adventure, I oftentimes don't make that the climactic encounter, because I find that players always want to save up. This is how we work, right? We've all played video games and we've gotten to the end of the video game and we haven't used any of our consumable items, right? Because we're like, well, we got to save them because we might need them later. So if you throw a sledgehammer encounter before the final encounter, one of two things is going to happen. One, they might decide, oh, this is a big encounter, we need to bring out the big guns, and they start blowing all their spells and other resources that they have, all their limited stuff, because they're like, this is a really tough fight. They do that, which means that they're actually pretty beat up when they actually go into the final, like, climactic encounter, which actually makes it feel more climactic, because they're going to be real beat up when they get there. That's great. That's good. That's what I want as a dungeon master. I want it to feel like it's a real knockdown, dangerous, drag-out fight, if it's going to be a fight. I want that. So the best thing I can do is throw a harder fight in front of it to block for it. Or they decide that they are not going to use those resources in the sledgehammer fight, which is perfectly fine. This happens quite often. What it means is that they might have to run from the fight because they're trying to use cantrips on something that's definitely knocking their socks off. Or they make it through, it'll be a bit of a slog, which is okay. There were ways for it not to be a slog. They chose for it to be a slog. That's okay. And if they do that, that means that they are going to have to use like a lot of their health resources afterwards to get, so that way they're to pump themselves back up so they're ready for that final encounter. So either way, I'm getting them to use a lot of their resources beforehand, or give them a much more dramatic fight because they're choosing not to use their resources because they're trying to save it for the end. So it is fun. I rolled 2 4s, right? I believe so. So 2 HOTTs, 2 treasure, 2 hot, 2 furious. So we know for sure there's going to be a magic item there. That's great. I love it. I want there to be magic items there. I realize my stupid head's in the way, and you can't see what I'm saying. I'm looking at. Go. Go. There we go. Now my stupid head's less in the way. Alright. Jail cell. Let's do it. What's in this room? 4 and 2. So we're going to have another double treasure, so another magic item's going to be in here. But that's going to be empty with treasure, which is 2. And hot with treasure. Perfect. Which in the end just means hot treasure. I could add the empty in if I want that to be true or not. I've done this enough that like I read that when I'm like, oh, there's not 4 things in here. That means that one of these things was empty. Like I can tell up here, oh, one of these was obviously empty because I don't have the other thing in here. This I know. 1, 2, 3, 4. Both those things are accounted for. So that's probably going to be some sort of, given what this kind of dungeon is, I'm guessing that there's some sort of trap that's going to be in the jail cell, probably to capture people trying to escape or something. We got our statue of Belir. Roll them dice. 4 and 6. All right. Another double treasures. This one's going to have a creature and a hot in it. Nice. Hot. Creature. I realized that I started doing... I started doing all capitals. I'm nothing if inconsistent. Doesn't really matter, it's just a scratch. Private room. What's going on in the private room? Empty. And hot with treasure. Lots of traps. Don't have to be traps, remember. That can be any sort of hazard or obstacle or trick or trap. So it can be any of those. And in this antechamber. So you'll notice, like I said, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to come across a full "there's nothing in this room." That doesn't happen very often. I know that as a DM. The players, when they come across an empty room, don't know that there's necessarily anything in there unless they decide to search in there. Which they might, because it's a suspiciously empty room. So we have empty and creature. So ain't nothing in here but a creature. So there's not much going on in this antechamber. There's literally nothing in there, so this might be a good place where this might be like a rug of smothering. I'm going to interpret that thing as being a rug because I can't figure out what that thing is supposed to be in that room. So I'm going to say it's a rug. So that will probably be a rug of smothering. Because I think that's what makes sense to me. And for our jail keeper's room, you know, there are other reasons there might be bars up there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a jail keeper's room. I thought that would be weird because it's away from the other area that's got bars on it. Maybe that's more like an area where they hold valuables. That might be, let's say this is like a reliquary room. That makes more sense to me. That makes way more sense to me. I should have thought of that earlier. 5 and 2. Creature. Empty with treasure. So creature and treasure. Simple. That's it. So now I know. I had the map already because it's a really great system if you have things like Dyson Logos maps or anything like that. You can just go grab random maps and just start throwing stuff in there. Just by rolling some d6. You're like, okay, if we wanted to flesh this out. We kind of said this was cultist. So we have the common rooms. Here's the thing, is that this dungeon is very small. Dimension-wise. Not just the amount of rooms, which is also small. But just dimension-wise is really small. Each of these squares is supposed to be 5 feet. Well, we could expand it, but that means, like, we can't... There's not really a lot of opportunity for us, for a double creature, to put a horde of creatures in here, unless we want to just make it a massive swarm of stuff, which we could. I think this thing over here, in this area right here, is supposed to be a fireplace? It's either a fireplace or a shelf. I don't know which one. Because there's one also up here, and this looks like a shelf to me. Like, these look maybe like they're shelves or benches or cabinets. Maybe that's what the C's for. Are C's for cabinets? No, why would there be a cabinet here? This might be a cabinet, though. So I think I'm going to interpret that as fireplace, which means that there could be something that comes down out of the fireplace. So if I wanted to do, like, a nice big swarm of bats or something like that, that'd be fun. So that might be what I've been here. I'm being like a... Swarms of bats. Flood in, when disturbed. And some sort of treasure. Looks like there's a barrel. So some sort of treasure that's in the barrel. I could roll for treasure if I wanted to roll for treasure. Or we could say something about there is something, it could be a clue or something to what's down in here. Maybe, maybe not. If they were down here looking for a very specific thing, this would probably be where I'd notate something like that. But for now, we'll leave it blank, because treasure, that could be anything. We could roll random treasure, but you guys know how to roll random treasure. You don't need my help for that. So in the shrine room, hey, there's a conveniently located trap already in here. So, this idea is, we've got 2 HOTTs, so there could be multiple traps in here, or this one trap could be real bad. I like the idea that this one trap is real bad. It's a 5-foot trap. I think it's going to be a classic pit trap with a twist. I ran a dungeon a little while back that had a very similar mechanic that I enjoyed and I found was fun. It won't be as fun as that one was, because that one was made to order. But the idea is this is a trap. They step on it, they drop. But there's going to be a chute, and I think that chute is going to take them from here, and they're going to, slip and slide, woo, and they're going to end up down here in this little jail cell. I like that. Like, hey, somebody came to mess with the shrine. If you do that, walk up to the shrine, not paying attention, you slip and you shoop. You get slid down in here. I like that. And because that's kind of a double trap, because it's number one, you're gonna remove the person from the room, put them in an area they don't know where they are, and nobody else knows where they are contextually at this point. Assuming they came in this door and they immediately hit the trap, which is probably what's going to happen. They're probably not going to go through the whole dungeon, then come back and then hit the trap. That's unlikely. Could happen, but unlikely. And so one person's going to go missing, so if there's anything else that they have to deal with, because they're going to have to find this person first, which they'll get to, which is also going to have its own little hazard obstacle trick or trap down here, too. But there's also going to be a creature in this room. So because there's a creature in this room, they have a straight line of sight up here. So once people start coming down what looks like, I think, are supposed to be stairs, though very steep stairs, coming downstairs, which is why I thought about the chute going down here. They're going to have direct line of sight on them, and those creatures can do whatever they're going to do. Which means you might have an option where there's somebody trapped in here. These guys are coming to have a fight. They're going to have a fight in like this little intersection way. Maybe there's somebody still at the top of the stairs. Maybe the wizard is up at the top of the stairs, shooting spells down. The fighters are down there at the bottom, giving them what for. And there's, let's be in all honesty, it's probably the rogue. It's either the rogue or cleric who decide to go check out the shrine. One's going there to steal stuff. The other one's going there to figure out stuff about the gods. And so one of them will probably end up in here. There's a high likelihood. So there's going to be a combat outside. They're going to be stuck in here. If it's the rogue, they might be able to pick the lock themselves, which is really good. If it's the cleric, they're going to have limited line of sight to be able to do much in that combat. But it does give them a cool opportunity for, if there is a rogue in the party, to be to squeeze their way through this hallway in combat to get there to unlock their door and actually get the cleric into the fight. It'd be a very cool way to do it. So it already kind of makes a much more dynamic, much more fun encounters going on. It's actually a multiple room combat thing that's happening. Very easy, very fun. So yeah, I think that's what it's going to be. So they're going to have the pit trap shoot to jail cell. And then it would do some damage to them. It's a 5-foot thing, so only one person's going to get caught in it, likely. There is always a chance, players are weird, that they might, when one person falls into the pit trap and scoots out of sight where they have no idea where that person goes, there's a chance that they all decide to jump into the pit trap so that at least they're all together. That can happen. It'll be perfectly fine if they end up in this room. Even if they are in a party that doesn't have a rogue or somebody else who can pick locks, who can get them out of here, they should probably have somebody in their party who's strong. And if they have somebody in their party who is strong, then they should be able to, bend bars and make their way out that way. Or figure out some other sort of shenanigans. Magic or alchemy or who knows. Artificer can do artificer things. Kind of depends on their makeup. Might be able to just step out of it, do a little magic step, teleport, get out of it. Do that. There's lots of options for it. They can get out of the room. I trust in my players, as I think all of us should as Dungeon Masters and Game Masters. This is a problem. You guys can figure out how to get out of a room. I believe in you. You are very powerful individuals. You can figure out what it is. Even if only one of you gets out, What I'll do is I'll put a pressure brake valve, a pressure valve here. Be like, okay, how do we release pressure? And by that, in a design way, being like, how do I ensure that they can't get stuck in there? I can do that by putting the key somewhere in here. Well, we know that the warden's room, or let's say the private room. We'll say that treasure, part of that treasure includes the jail cell key. So that's part of what's in that private room. They go searching through this little cabinet that's up here. They'll find the jail cell key, which will allow them to go there and be able to get one of them out. So even if only one of them can, do a magic teleport out or whatever it is, or they can't figure out how to get their friend out, eventually they will find the key and they will be able to get their friend out. Hopefully, this shouldn't be a problem. But it is nice sometimes to put in a super, super easy failsafe to be like, well, I mean, somebody had to have the key to this thing. They're around here somewhere. He is around here somewhere. So we'd probably be like, so damages and traps. There are different types of traps that you can make. There are only a few fundamental ones. There are murder traps, detainment traps, lockdown traps, and alarm traps. Those are the 4 basic types of traps that you might want to know. That's super helpful for building out stuff like this. Murder traps does what it says on the tin. They're there to kill you. That's why I have a real problem with those toothless traps in D&D. Like, hey, if it's meant to kill people, it should try to kill them. It shouldn't just do a little bit of damage to it. It should be at least have the ability to potentially just kill somebody. So, there's murder trap, detainment trap. That's what this is. So it does a little bit of damage, but damage isn't the primary thing that it's focused on. It's focused on putting you here in this jail cell. It's detaining you. It's putting you in an area that you can't easily get out of. It's restricting your movement. What do we say? Third was lockdown. Lockdown is traps is the classic. We're stealing the jewel from the museum, and then we picked up the jewel, and all the bars came down. So it's kind of like a detainment trap, but not exactly the same. Lockdown generally means like it's trying to keep people from getting in. Often, it's been like, oh, there's a perimeter breach. We're gonna lock the bulkhead so nothing else can get through, kind of thing. So it's like an inverse detainment almost. It's like it's trying to keep things from getting in once it gets triggered, which makes things harder if you're trying to get into places. And then the last one is alarm trap. You trip the wire, the alarms go off. All the creatures start rushing your way. Which means I start rolling with technically disadvantage because on a 1, I roll with advantage for wandering monsters at that point. So it's more likely, also not going to get the drop on monsters at that point if the alarms start going off. And they're going to start actively looking around for you, for the party. I roll with advantage for wandering monsters, which in this case actually means rolling at disadvantage because on a 1 is when random encounters spawn. So I'll roll 2d6. If either one of them comes up once, hey, some monsters stumbled across you because they're looking for you actively. Now that's a little weird in a dungeon that's this small, but this doesn't mean that they're the only people here. This is one of the things that I try to tell people about players and other dungeon masters, is that the monsters that are in the dungeon only represent the monsters that are in the dungeon. That doesn't mean that's the totality of all monsters. Think of a classic goblin cave. You go into the cave, there are 12 goblins in total in the cave. That doesn't mean that there's only 12 goblins here. In fact, there's probably lots that are outside in the countryside or doing stuff outside the cave. And every once in a while, they're going to come back. So new people are going to keep showing up. And new people are going to keep showing up. That's why I talk about having infinite amount of wandering monsters, is that this isn't the totality of everybody who knows where this place is and is part of this group. It's just the people who are here now. Plus anybody who's moving around. Alright. We got that. Our jail cell. What's going to be the HOTT for our jail cell? Ooh, I'm thinking this is a good one for that because we think that they're probably going to have to unlock it. Maybe have to pick this lock. This is a good one for like a poison needle trap. I like that. And we might go, you know, what is the treasure that's in here? Because it's a jail cell, so that's real weird. So what would be the treasure in there? This might be a nice place where we might look like, this might be, you know, information. And so it might be like a ragged note. Or it could be a gemstone in the old prison pocket. Or hidden in the floor somewhere. Anything like that. Could be a small amount of cash, maybe. Probably not something bigger, though. Because they have to be able to probably hide it in here. So what are the stuff that's in here? There's probably, if we look up here, we said that this is probably a magic item. 2 treasures doesn't always have to be magic items. Because we ended up with a bunch of them. So I might not throw like 3 magic items at them. In this such a small area, but I'm certainly going to throw 1 at them. Does that make more sense? I think maybe it makes more sense for that to be the statue of Belir, to have the magic item. So in the shrine's going to have something. It's going to have like a, you know, some like art objects. Art objects. I don't know, like we'll say like a religious symbol. Alright, we'll say a religious idol. Let's say golden idol. How about that? And that could be sort of our treasure there. That having the golden idol there, you know, that's going to be glimmering in that torchlight as they're going in there, and they're going to be like, the rogue's going to be, I'm going to get my fingies on that. I need that golden idol. Bam, they hit the trap. They go down the chute. They hit the ground down there. They take a little bit of fall damage, not much, like a d6. It's not going to be much. Maybe 2d6. As they get bumped as they fly down the chute and land in the little jail cell, as they try to, then they'll try to pick the lock to get their way out. They're probably gonna give them disadvantage because they're trying to pick a lock from the wrong side, looking at it, which means it's unlikely that they will see that there's the poison needle trap, and then they will poison themselves. So it'll be a little cascade of bad things happening. Which, like we said at the time, it's probably likely that the rest of the party will be engaged in some sort of combat encounter at that point. So, a little cascade of troubles there, which is always nice. What is the treasure we want to put up here? I don't know. I think this is going to be like mundane stuff. Because that looks like just a barrel to me. That's in the corner here. So I think it's just going to be like mundane gear. So if they need some extra rope or rations or something like that, maybe that's the kind of stuff they find in there. Or maybe, you know, some extra arrows or a couple daggers, whatever. Alright, the statue of Belir. So we're going to have some sort of, whoever's kind of the big person here, because we only have a few creatures here. None that are in the private room, so I think this is adjoining the private room, so... Or that person might be in the reliquary room. Actually, that person's probably in the reliquary room. So this can be probably the actual guard here. I assume Belir is probably some sort of like fiend. That seems right to me. So I'm gonna say these are like imps. Yeah, let's go with like imps. Imps, maybe a Cambion. Etc. Some sort of like low-level fiendy kind of guys. So we've done traps. I think most of this is going to be traps. Usually depending on the integrity of the dungeon itself is how I determine how many traps I'm going to put in something as opposed to hazards. So if this was like a rundown ruin or something like that, we'd be doing a lot more hazards. It'd be like broken floors and fallen in ceilings and all sorts of stuff like that. Poison gas leaks, stuff like that. There's leaking into this underground chamber. We'd have more of this, but this place, just by the map, looks really well taken care of, really well maintained. So that tells me that almost everything we're going to run across is going to be traps and tricks here. We've only done traps thus far, so maybe we should do a little trick. So for this one, I think we're gonna do like a spell effect. What is it like? What is? We're gonna say like a Tasha's hideous laughter. But let's say it's a screaming. Tasha's hideous screaming. And we'll say that that's like the statue's eyes, glowing eyes. And obviously this will only affect things that are not going to be fiends. So it should affect most of the party, but won't affect our imps or camions or whatever the heck we end up throwing in there. And then we need some sort of treasure. I think that this guy's going to have some sort of like, what do you think, like a cool magic sword? No, that's a little bit too on the nose. We're gonna be like a nasty magic whip. Like it's gonna have like a nasty magic whip with barbs, and then it's gonna do something. I don't know. If I was at this point now, I'd build that out, but this is an example dungeon. So the Statue of Belier has these glowing eyes. It's gonna hit you, and if you fail it, instead of doing Tasha's hideous laughter, you're gonna be screaming a bunch as you're shown terrible images of the nine hells or whatever, burning all around you, and you start screaming, which of course will probably bring more creatures, which is great because there's probably gonna be like one dude in this room to fight with while you're stunned. And then the Statue of Belier with his glowing eyes also is holding this really nasty whip that's got like thorns and barbs and stuff on it. They're like, oh, that's a magic weapon. We can actually take that. Is it evil? Do our, dungeon delving tomb robbers care that much about it? Maybe not. That's again assuming that this is a nasty cult lair, which doesn't have to be. That's just me working off of what this says. Dungeon of Belier out there. Alright, perfect. Then we go on to the private room. Alright, HOTT. Obviously, this is the sort of person who's going to trap their entryway. It looks like there's kind of like a real door, false door, like curtain and then door. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what this is. Why do we just have this? This doesn't do anything. So it seems like a good spot to put a trap, though. Maybe the trap is like, it's gonna be like something maybe over here that like fires across, maybe. I like that. And so you can walk through the curtain, but it's better to walk this way and then you can deactivate the trap and go around. It's a little weird. This whole junction doesn't really serve a lot of purpose, from what I can tell. This one just seems to have a curtain and the other one seems to have doors. I think this is what this C is standing for. And I'm not sure what the L stands for. Levers? Not sure. Doesn't look like portcullis, so could be... Oh, it probably just stands for locked. It probably just stands for locked. That these doors are locked. That would make sense. Alright. Perfect. So yeah, I'm thinking be a cool trap to put there. I mean, sometimes It does seem like it. You just kind of go with the classic on this one. I think it's just going to be like a spear trap. Just classic pressure plate spear trap. Like, hey, you walk through here, plink, comes out and tries to stab you. We said the jail cell key was going to be in this room, and some other treasure that's going to be in here, and that could be hidden, it could not be hidden. Probably not. What do we think's in there? This could be. I think there's probably we could have like a cool notebook in there because this is a person's like private study. It could be in cool. So it could be a notebook with clues, and then could just be like a holy symbol, maybe something else, maybe some little bit of lucre because they're not getting a bunch in here. Other than that nasty whip and that butt gemstone from the person pocket. They go in there and look for it. Which they may not look for. If you see a jail cell, they'll be like, well, I'm not going to search this place for treasure. It probably doesn't have any treasure in it. If so, they might miss it. So you always got to be prepared that if there's something they need to find, you don't want to put that behind some sort of die roll. But, alright. And then in the antechamber, there's some sort of creature. We think that's going to be the Rug of Smothering. I like that because otherwise it's just going to be like another dude who's hanging out here. The thing is, you have these long hallways. So you have a long hallway here where the Cambions or imps or whatever can see people coming down through here, and they're probably going to hear the person coming through the chute. But you also have this massive long hallway here, which means that the creature that's in here is going to be able to see everything that happens to the creature in here. So you can have a cock-up cascade where you have a bunch of encounters kind of fall into each other, which is not great. You generally want to avoid that. Because that's the thing that'll kill PCs real quick. But a Rug of Smothering might not care about that because it's not particularly smart. But we could also make this a neutral NPC if we wanted to. This could be a neutral NPC. Let's go with that instead, because that makes more sense. So, say neutral NPC. I don't know. These people we think maybe do human sacrifice, so they're going to be like a slave trader. Maybe they're waiting to talk to the guy who's in the reliquary room. Makes sense to me. And through this locked door, we're going to have, and who's kind of like essentially our little BBEG. Again, this is one of those areas where, like, I wasn't intending to do it, but honestly, the Statue of Belir room, like, everything that's going to happen in these 3 rooms right here is probably going to be a much more difficult circumstance than fighting the guy that's in here. Likely. Now, our neutral NPC might get involved. Might show up in the fight, and on the other guy's side, might be... Maybe we can pay him to walk away from this. Maybe he can give us some information. I don't know. It could be any number of things. Maybe this is one of those things where they could sneak down, and maybe they can hide back in here, in these little hallways right here, and they can listen to their conversation they're having. And obviously, one's probably buying something from the other, probably slaves, to be delivered. And so the person's going to be like, "All right, I'll get your money from in here," which we think is like the reliquary room, which is probably where they keep most of the good stuff. This is probably going to be where most of our treasure is. So if that's the case, then what I would do is I would probably do this. I would do this would be treasure times 2, and I would take this. I'd knock this down to 1 treasure, and so it's just the golden idol that's there. So we could have coins and religious items. And that's it. Like, that's the dungeon. Super easy to put together. Doesn't take a whole lot of time. Takes much more time talking about it, but once you kind of have the idea, you can kind of see how it works very, very simply. start throwing that all together, and bada bing, bada boom, what do you know? We have ourselves a little dungeon. We can take this dungeon, and we can run our next game on it. Like, hey, you guys are going here. Why are you going here? We'll come up with some reason. You are... The idol might be the thing that they're after, which would lead them to the trap, which is great. Now, I'm always assuming that they're going to screw up. The likelihood is that they'll... If it's the rogue, they're probably going to see the trap and they'll be able to sidestep it. And that won't be a factor for them. But what I would do is that if a fight breaks out in this hallway, I would try to get them to push them back up here and see if I can accidentally... If one of my players isn't paying attention, see if I can back one of them into that trap by pushing them into the trap. Using the old noodle. Try to back one of them in there and then they get trapped in here in the middle of a fight. Which is a very fun thing to do. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I love this little dungeon stalking thing. It's so simple, so easy, works so perfectly because it's just so... It's elegant in its simplicity is why I really like it. It works really well. So I hope you guys give this a shot. See if it works for you. It's been my favorite way to stock dungeons for a very long time now, so I'm happy to share it with you guys. So let me know what you think, if you try it, how it goes, and more specifically, if you have different ways of stocking dungeons or different, whether it's roll tables or other ways you do it. I have a few different ways I do it, but this is the one that I use most of the time. Go ahead and drop those into the comments. I'd love to see that. I always try to get a little bit better each time I read some of this stuff and try to incorporate some of it into my games. I think after this we're going to do some hex mapping. We're going to do some more points of interest on our caliphate map. I think. That sounds good, because we still got a little bit of time left, so I think that's what we're going to do. But I am going to take a short bio break and refill up on some coffee. So I'm going to do that. See you guys hang fast, and we'll be back here in just a few minutes. All right? All right, I'm back. That took a little bit longer than expected, as is always the way. So I said we're going to do a little bit more hex mapping. Well, technically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be filling out points of interest probably for this hex map, because I don't think we're going to have much else to do on this one. How do we want to do this? I can pull this out. Why do you keep doing this? That is an incredibly annoying thing that you're doing. Why are you like this? When did it become like this? Incredibly annoying. Okay. Sorry. I guess this is a new update. So I generally use Opera, which is not my general browser, but I've been using it mainly for this stuff. But it's doing really weird thing when you try to move tabs around in it, which is very necessary for the sort of stuff that I do on stream. And they've got a new thing where it's just like it just starts throwing it to different desktops. I'm like, why are you doing this? But we got it where we needed to go eventually. We recovered it. So let's throw it over there. Probably the easiest way to do it. Oh no, my big fat head's in the way. Sounds about right. Alright. So this is the Caliphate. This is where the current game that I'm running is set in. We just finished session 32 yesterday. This is a county scale map for the hexes, which you guys only need to know that it's about 10 nautical miles from side to side in these hexes, which is about 12 imperial miles or statute miles, common miles, whatever you want to call them. So, and in kilometers, I don't know off the top of my head. I have the distinct privilege of living in a country that we decide that all our measurements should be different from everybody else. So unfortunately, I don't know the conversion off the top of my head. But we are, we've done some of the stuff that's up here. So we finished last time down here with our narwhal, our lost unicorns, which was right here. Again, my stupid big head's in the way. There we go. Gives you a little bit better. Let's can we can zoom in a little bit more than that, can't we? That's alright. Forgot that I was doing sparks for these. That will be interesting. Alright, I'm just gonna copy this, and we're gonna make ourselves a new tab, even though this should have been 4. We're gonna make ourselves a new tab. Boom, and this is gonna be 5 hex. So we're gonna start off right here. So we have, there is a waterway here. We're gonna have one waterway. We've got something 1 here. I guess this will be the easiest way to do this. 1 hex. What do we have? What's going on here? Do we know yet? APL 5 through 10 Chantry funded hospital. 1 patient? Question mark? Why did I say 1 patient? Oh, Chantry funded. Yeah, okay. Now I understand. Yeah. This is Chantry funded. So somebody has their own sort of like personal hospital. Potential. So one of the quick questions we need to figure out is whether we want this to be on land or not. It's likely that there will be islands. These are all, everything that's in this greater hex is going to be on the water. So any land that's there is going to be relatively small islands. So we need to determine what we may or may not want to put under the waves. And so I think we'll do 1 hex, 1, 2, 3, 3 hex. And then the third one, 7 and 27 hex. And we can just go ahead and 1, 2, 3, boop. And 1, 2, 3, but there we go. Alright, so this is going to be a hospital. It's occupied by monsters. Let's see. We are... I'm trying to remember the region off the top of my head. I think we are in... You know what? I'm just gonna have to look it up. I'm gonna move this and pull this over. I'm trying to remember. If you hadn't noticed, it's been a minute since I've looked at this. I have been not great about working on this. Let me look at... Here's the region map. Let me look at photo. I'll show the region map real quick. Because we are... We're way up there. Okay. Oh yeah, we're like firmly in the wilderness, aren't we? That's fine. Perfect. No worries. So we're firmly in the wilderness. I just need to know that so I know what kind of monsters to roll for. Stuff like that. So we're firmly in the wilderness, which is great. Not terrible at all. We go to... Log me in. I need Hex. Thank you. Go. Alright. So we were in religious site. So we do need a theme and we do need an age, I think. I don't think we have any of those. We do not. Alright, so let's do a theme. Or let's do an age and then a theme. How about that? Three. Okay, so it's recent, so it's a more recent building. And we need a theme. Okay, that should be natural. Natural 14, which might be... Yeah, that's monstrosity. Alright, so we got our theme, which is probably just going to be our thing. Ooh, unless... No, where creatures still fall under humanoids, I think, right? We can also determine our APL real quick. It will be 4 plus, so APL 6. Perfect. And we said it was recent. So we know that this is a Chantry-funded hospital. There's potentially one patient. So that was why I was like, well, if it's one patient, it might make more sense if they are like a were creature, which would be pretty dope. Easiest way to figure that out would be to, let's go look at some monster. Alright, you gonna show me some monsters? There we go. So we want monstrosities, and we want something that's going to be in our range, so that's going to be 5 to 10. I'm really going to pick something that's about CR6. Landing in our APL there. Though we could check it real quick, even though I just jumped out of the encounter builder. That's alright. Move by CRs. What we got under CR6s? Lion Drake, Underworld Cerberus, Undercity Medusa, Gloomstalker, Large Monstrosity, Flies, ooh, flying creatures, that'd be fun. Does anything, Category 2 Crassus or Crassus, one of those. I was not crazy. I remembered that were creatures are technically monstrosities. What if the one person who has the Chantry is a were creature? That makes sense to me. I like it. It also makes sense that they might be isolated on a tiny, tiny island. So, but to make sure, I'm going to ask the Oracle. Hey, Oracle, our D20 Oracle, we roll 11 higher, the answer is yes. 10 or less, the answer is no. And we're going to put a modifier on it. Is this a terrestrial were creature? Because there are were sharks and things like that. I think that's extremely likely. So I'm going to say +5. So really only 1 through 5 is going to be a were shark. And it is spoken. All right. So yeah, we're going to go with, I guess, were shark. Spitting mimic. This is a new. So at which point I would probably just use the werebear stats. Oh, except they use. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I'd probably use something like the werebear stats. I'll drop that in for now. But there are actual wereshark stats. I can go find them. I just don't think that they are officially new. All right, so we're gonna go wereshark. Werebear. All right, so we have this chantry funded hospital, which means there's only one patient. It's going to be this werebear, which I love. This is already very, very interesting. Oh, it is going to have some sort of like a hamlet attached to it. And so hamlets have up to a population of 400. The way that I do them. And we're going to roll that up to 375. 375. I like it. Ooh, we were doing the spark table, so let me pull that up. Hello, Dark. I don't want to dig it out. Physical copy out, but this is it. We are doing these kind of spark tables, which are fun. Gonna give us an idea of what stuff that might be going on. 60 and 52. Activate. Sorcery. And then makes sense. I like it. Easy. Makes sense to me, like you have this Chantry funded hospital. Well, I probably should come up with a better name for that. So, I think of what else I might need. Here's what I'm going to do with that. Is the hospital itself? We know it's a were shark. But is the hospital itself on an island? Again, I think that that's very likely. Otherwise, I mean, we could. You know what? I'm gonna leave it 50-50. It's like, otherwise it's weird for a were shark, but it's like, it's not that weird. I mean, it's not like there aren't aquatic races in this world. There are aquatic people. Okay, so it is on land, so there is a small island. Okay. It's giving me that sort of like Lindisfarne kind of feel to it. If we pull up. Yeah, like it's giving me that kind of vibe. You're like, yeah, it's just kind of a building that's out on a little island, kind of all by its freaking self. Obviously, this is a very tropical setting, but this idea that it's just kind of like a craggy hill island. It's just kind of got a little thing on it. I like it. Really fun. Ooh, super fun encounter. It's got this almost Beauty and the Beast kind of vibe to it. Like there's this person who's kind of shut themselves up under the care, and they're trying to do some sort of strange sorcery that they're trying to activate to maybe get rid of this were curse. I like it. I like it a lot. We just need a name for this place. So, did I put this in here? I believe I put them in here. I did. Smart me. That's old me looking out for future me. Let's get a good name for this place. 3-1. It helps if I go to the right document. 3. Identifier and function. Okay, well, it's a hospital. And 1. Some sort of basic adjective. Roll that. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So something shape. So could be round, squat. I like kind of squat. Squat hospital is a strange name. Let's roll another one. Sometimes, hey, if you don't get a good one, if nothing comes to mind, then maybe roll again. So we rolled a 2. Let's see what that does. Quantity. Well, the quantity is 1, so the lone hospital. It is its function, which is hospital. Yeah. We can call it the lone hospital. Yellow 6. All right. Let's say on the site. That's not the way. A small island is a recently constructed hospital. The small chantry funded site building tends to a singular patient. We didn't really determine anything about this person. Person afflicted by lycanthropy. Who turns into the form of a we'll say vicious shock. The island is deserted. Oh, well, actually, it's not. It's got a Hamlet on it. Sorry. Not deserted at all. Never mind. It's really good person. Sitting alone atop the hill. Away from the hamlet below. The small chantry funded building tends to a singular patient, a person afflicted by lycanthropy, who turns into the form of a vicious shark. A small staff attends the patient and searches for new and strange sorceries. And searches for new treatments and strange sorceries. Sorceries to end the affliction on their singular patient. Sounds good to me. So I don't need to necessarily come up with any of the NPCs' names or anything like that. Now, that's not super important. I could if I wanted to, but none of these people are particularly important. There is the idea that probably whoever I assume is in charge of the island is probably the person who is the were-shark. And that's how they have been able to fund this. Because a chantry is essentially like a religious building, or like it's essentially like it's a small chapel that's really dedicated to one specific person. Usually it's like, hey, you set up a chantry upon your death, so that way there's a priest specifically who prays for you to get into heaven. That's how it used to work. So this is like, oh, somebody has funded basically their own little hospital. Like, please help me figure out how to get rid of my lycanthropy. So I guess it's just like, does everybody on the island know that this person's a lycanthrope? I think they have to, right? It's a small island. Maybe they don't know the specifics. Obviously, the lord or lady, whoever's in charge here, is afflicted with something. Do they know that it's lycanthropy? Maybe, maybe not. I'll leave it 50-50. They do, okay. So they do know. Do the people of the town fear them? No. Interesting. So, maybe previous to the chantry, the hamlet where an unafraid lycanthrope, now that they are well contained in the lone hospital on the hill. So now the lone hospital makes a little bit more sense now as the name. Lone hospital. Alright, that's one done. Now we can delete the rest of these. I just needed them. I just wanted to keep them there. So I would have a little template for myself. No, I no longer need those. Alright, that's one done. So again, yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but I'm gonna move this over here. Yeah, actually, this is a very weird spot. You know what? I don't have a good place for this. I don't have a good place for it. And it'll just hang out here, I guess. It's like if I move it too far, I can't see an OBS to make sure my head's not in the way for stuff we're looking at. But we shall endeavor to do our best. All right, so that is the lone hospital. Down here we have APL 0510 Omen info or warning sign. We don't have anything else down about it, so let's go ahead and get that APL. Get to the APL's 5. Perfect. I guess we can get a theme. I'm trying to think of, I don't want to structure this. Let's do a theme. Yeah. Well, I was pretty sure that it was going to be that, because we're deep in the wilds here. What's at the far end of the wilds? Plant. We're going to have a plant theme here. And let's go ahead and go info warning sign. This is one of my things that I really need to focus on. I want to build this up a little bit more. I feel like just having 8 examples is a little thin. I wanna make this a little bit more robust. What I think I want to do is I think I want to make a column for omens, a column for info, and a column for warning, and then roll on all of them so I can kind of put them together. But let's get an age. Ooh, it's ancient. Love it. Ancient 8-5. Megalith, that would make sense. Statue or petrified creature. Ooh, I like it. What do we think? We could do like a cool like Wicker Man kind of thing, but made out of like stones. I'm thinking like is it the cromlech? I don't use these terms often enough to commit them to memory always. I think is it the cromlech? No, it's dolmen, right? Dolmen's the one that's like the table. I realize that I'm just saying things. I'll show a picture of it. That will be a lot easier. Yeah, it's dolmen. All right. These megalithic structures. So using the same thing. So usually it's like a tabletop that's used. It's like a marker for some sort of like barrow or anything like that. Like you see down here. Like usually they were. At some point there was a whole bunch of earth around them. Usually, I think is what we suspect at this point. And usually they are like a barrow, that's where you bury somebody. Yeah, it's a good shot of it down here. But over time, erosion happens, and then those large standing stones are left, but the stuff that was around them is not. So that is, you know, a potential thing for like maybe the aspects of Stonehenge that we don't know, because we have ideas about maybe how it was constructed, but it is likely that maybe there was a bunch of earth there and then they just maybe scooped all the earth later. Or it probably didn't erode over time because they were using it for calendar. But I was thinking like a Wicker Man construction, so they're using like one of these to make a large person. Oh, but it's supposed to be a large plant. What's the plant version of it? How are we gonna mix that plant theme in? Maybe a bunch of ivy growing over it or something like that. Or was it kudzu? Because that's kudzu. These guys, they grow so fast, like just overtake stuff. Ooh, we could do like a cool green man thing. I like it. All right, cool. Yes. Let's go ahead and name it. I feel like we know it's gonna be ancient. We're gonna be like megalith, statue. Question is it humanoid? The thing we're going through? I think almost assuredly. Well, 6 plus 5, that does make 11, so the answer is yes. Okay, so it is a humanoid structure. We got where we wanted to go. I love it. And what is the site communicating? This is so old that we might not know, but we'll roll on the spark table. How about that? Get some sparks, baby. 7243. I've got it pulled up. I know you can't see it. Assist. Guess what? Assist nature. Ooh, it's this nature. Nice. All right, I like it. I've got some ideas. It's like a super old, maybe weird folk religion thing. We've got our spark. Assist nature. And then, you know, is there any occupation here? Two. What does 2 tell us? It tells us nothing if we don't go to the right place. We're in the wild, so it's empty. All right, unoccupied. Put that. And how was I notating that previously? I just wasn't. I don't think. Populations. Floating trading post. Yeah, because the floating trading post did not have any. Yeah, there's no significant population or permanent residents on the cult mess. All right, perfect. Cool. So it is gonna be humanoid. Ooh, is it coming out of the water? Is it like half in the water? That's really cool. I really like that. To the point that I'm not gonna even leave that up to a roll. So it's like a half berry. So we're probably only seeing like maybe waist, upper torso up, almost like headshot up. It's covered in this, and maybe it's like kelp all the way down. It's very cool. Very cool. Maybe it seems like the plants are actually radiating out from it. Very cool. I like it. We should probably come up with a name for this thing, though. Let's run a little name table, see if we get anything fun. 5 and 4. 5 feature and function. So the feature would be anything nearby. I mean, the feature is just going to be the sea, I think. And its function, well, we know its function is essentially assist nature. What's a good name for that? I'm thinking maybe like a wave or something. Wave. No, I'm struggling with the function aspect. We might just call it the wave idol. Its function is to be an idol, so it's the wave idol. Yeah. Alright, I'm good with that. So we're going to have them sticking out of the... we'll say rising. Rising out of the... sea is the form of a humanoid figure created from megaliths. Surface covered in kelp. It we'll say in a flesh of kudzu and kelp. The ancient statue, only half of the sea. And calls to some ancient spirits and folk. Mysticism. Of times gone by. Yeah, there aren't going to be any creatures there. The area around the idol teems with green plant growth, almost radiating from the statue, almost as though radiating from the statue. Yeah, I mean, like, that's it. Now we can make that all one thing. Yeah, I like it. I enjoy this. I think this works. Let's do this last one. I think that's probably gonna be it for today's stream, I think. And we'll knock this last one out. All right. Last one is Hex 27, way down here. So we've got something going on. An APL. Figure out what that APL is for. There's another were shark down here. I thought that sounded really familiar to me, and I couldn't remember why. Because I already know there's one here. Are those related? Almost assuredly, right? They've gotta be. Maybe one gave the other one the bite? That made me think of FNAF there for a second. When I said the bite. Alright. I like this. Things are starting to move in together. I love it. Love it when a plan comes together. Alright, so that's going to be APL 06. Alright, so we have this homestead. There's no occupation here. Is there anything else we need to know about those guys? I don't think so. They're pretty straightforward when it comes to isolated homesteads. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we know that there is a wereshark pariah that lives here. So maybe this one is cast out and this one is maybe more dangerous. Should we give them a name? I feel like we should give them a name. Let's give them a name. I have Thanathars still. Thanathars Guide to Everything. First off... Oh man, I don't have the thing in front of me. I'm not gonna dig it out. That's fine. I'll just roll it anyways. I might know what it is. If it's low, I'm gonna know what it is off the top of my head. It is low. Alright, perfect. So I know that that's gonna be a halfer. That works for me. And it's odd, and I believe odd is female. I believe so. Alright, so half are female. We'll just go with it. Do they have an important name like that? Almost assuredly. They sure do. They've got the most namey name that's ever named. So Arabic female names, we're going to go down to 97, which is Zaina. Zaina? Zaina, I think. I think it's Zaina. I'm sure somebody will correct me. I'm wrong. Ooh, here's a good question. Do they spend most of their time in wereshark form? I think so, because we haven't really put anything kind of under the water for the most part, and I feel like we should put this one under the water, and it would make sense because there's not anybody else. There's no other occupation here, so I think so. I think this is one of the ones that we're going to put underwater, so they're going to have an underwater den. As it is. No, not halter, halfer. Stop correcting me. You're wrong. This female heifer. And it's such a basic intro, so that's fine. The female heifer, Raya, cast out. after affliction, anthropy came to light, she now lives a solitary life under the waves as a were shark. In her den as a were shark. So we can tie them to the lone hospital. We don't necessarily have to, though. Sometimes I like to leave a little bit of wiggle room for me and be like, oh, these things are related, but I don't define what that relationship is. So it could be that the person at the hospital bit Zaina, or Zaina bit them. And that's, but it's likely that one or the other gave each other lycanthropy, and we don't know which one. I'm guessing she was cast out after her affliction, so I'm guessing likely she was the biter. I mean, we don't really need to say a whole lot more about her. Sometimes it's just like, that's who they are. And we'll say, where shark, and we'll put in here where bear. Here 6. And we can give her a spark. Sometimes the people who live by themselves, there's not a ton to say about them sometimes, especially if there's nothing else kind of around them, which there isn't in this case. Now, this person could have come from the mountains as well. All right, so 30. 4. 4. Which would be, ooh, capture. Capture lie. Ooh, capture lie. I like that. So if we put the spark down here, they want to capture lie. I think that my immediate thought interpreting that is that she's the person who was cast out. Maybe the person who's in the hospital said that she bit them, and that's how they turned into a were shark, but that is not the truth. But they just were able to construct that narrative, and no, she wasn't able to sort of combat that, and so they cast her out, even though she is the victim rather than the transgressor. Which makes Zaina the pariah very, very sad. And now it understands why she lives her life under the waves and not around other people, because other people have done wrong. Oof. That's tough. That's tough. Is there anything else that we want to say about her? We could give her some description, I guess. I don't know if that's worth the time. Let's look at some of our other pariahs, or other isolated homesteads. The Selfish Airy, Buchan Island. Oh, I didn't actually come up with a name for this one. I should probably do that. I didn't name this village. Let's do that real quick. Let's name this village. I know we're getting a little off topic. That's okay. 3-2. No problems. Figure that out real quick. All right. 3, 2, 3, 2, 2. 3, identifier and function. 2, be a geographic feature in this function. Where is this? This is hex 03. 07. So some sort of jungle. And also just island. So the geographic feature might need some help with this one. We'll use our old friend here. Geographic features in a jungle. We should probably get out of this. We should probably get into here. Well, they didn't really give us anything. Well, that's not fun. You know what? We'll just call it Bowl Village. How about that? Sometimes simplest things are easiest. Bowl is a part of the tree. All you need to know. We'll say construction of Bowl Village. We should probably call it abandoned construction village. That's fine. We got way off course there. Golden Grave Pit, Blockade Storehouse, Ruins Pelter Grove Village, Multiple Profane Font, Fasha the Pride. There we go. Yeah, so we gave Fasha a little bit of backstory on this one. So I guess we could give them a little bit of backstory. If we want to give... if we want to really tie it down, we can. I don't hate that. I mean, Capture Light feels really, really nice. Like that. We can go ahead and we can fill that out. And record according to her. I mean, a victim was given rupee. I guess on we don't have a name for whatever that tiny island is. It probably doesn't have a name. The island, hamlet, north. Sure. She was made the scapegoat and forced to flee her home for her life. Then, yeah, let's get a time period here. Let's get a D6 here. Old, so she's probably been, I would say that we're not talking about like a week's or months. Like she's been living out here probably for years at this point. She was scapegoated and forced to flee her home for her life. Past years, she has found solace only in solitude. And simple life, the waves, Leaving behind, we'll say humanity for the simple life. Dark beneath the waves. Wow, it's much more sad now. That's great. We did it. We did our job. We made it even sadder. That'll happen. All right. Well, that gets it. Actually, let's name this guy right here, because we do have. Let me get a pointer. We got this guy down here. We do actually have a waterway that's down here, so let's name our waterway. Do we have anything down here? This is. Now I'm gonna have to think for a second. Where are waterways under? I didn't put it under here, did I? I did not. One moment. I'll throw you over here because I gotta go look for this document real quick. River. Here. Yes. This is it, I believe. It is. It is. Here we go. Alright, now I can throw us back. Found it. Alright, so we are we are in county hexes. So the upper course would be the brook, which would be this guy right here. I think that has to be a creek. That's what we'll go with. Now we just need a name for that creek. Let's roll for that. Three and one, and not the right thing. All right. So identifier and function. Well, the function's river. The function is be a river. And our identifier is 1, which is basic, so we need another d10. One more. Here we go. 8. 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. Look on the right things. 8. The encompassing district. Okay. So which is going to be the mountains. I don't know if we have a name for the mountains yet. This is the highest mountains in the range, kind of coming off of that. So we might go. We go like High Mount Creek. That sounds good. I like that. Let's do that. Keep it nice and simple. Don't need to make things more difficult than they are. And then I'll just go ahead and add that to the name. Go here. Creek. And I believe this makes this a brook. You might say, why do I care about that? Well, really only because of this reason. If I go to the right document. So I really only care about this because of this little table right here, which tells me, most specifically, this column. These two columns, really. Hey, how can this waterway be crossed or used? So, this would be a creek, so down there in what is essentially a swamp. It's gonna be hard to find a place where you can cross it. And only in the shallows. But you are able to get through it with like canoes and punts and coracles and dugout canoes and stuff like that. As long as you don't have it be too heavy, because again, the channel depth's only going to be a few feet. So if you really load it down or you have a really big boat, or even just a normal boat, you need some sort of like flat bottom, like a punt or something that's got a very shallow draft. Then it's not really loaded down. But then you get up there, if you went up into the highlands here where the brook is, pretty easy to get across. It's very fordable, but not deep enough because it's only, a few inches deep. But, obviously you can't take a canoe in a foot of water. It's got to be a little bit deeper than that, generally. That's useful for me because I do a lot of exploration-based gameplay. So it's like, hey, if you want to know how you can go up there. So we would know right there is, hey, that's certainly the fall line. That is the end of navigation. So you cannot take boats any further up to there. That's it. All right. Yeah, I think that's gonna be everything for today's stream, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Hopefully you guys take a chance to take a look at the dungeon stocking stuff that we talked about earlier. And if you like more of this mapping stuff, of course you can go check out, we have lots of those streams, so if you want to check those out over on YouTube, lots of those videos, you can see me build out this whole freaking place if you want to. I have a massive world, a custom world I've been working on for many, many years. So if it all feels very overwhelming, trust me, it is very overwhelming. And you don't need to do that to run a very good game of D&D or any other TTRPG. It's just a thing that I like to do, and it's a place where I like to set all my games, so I had a very consistent game world that I could use, that I could call my own and fill it in, and I like doing the world building stuff and mapping. So it's me fun time as a Dungeon Master and Game Master. But thanks for hanging out. We'll do this again very soon. If you like this content, make sure to like it. If you want to see more of it, make sure you subscribe. We'll have lots of other videos and stuff going on. If you want to see some resources and things like that, I have pay what you want stuff over on DriveThruRPG. Go check out if you want to check those out. They're, you can pick them up for free, or if you want to throw me a couple bucks, that helps too. But that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.